Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big, weird, wild world out there, folks, and here we stand. A pie del cañón, ready for anything. I'm Rob, and you're listening to
The ProBoh Show!
Good morning, friends. You're listening to us live on the ProBoh Show, 8:30 a.m. Central European Time on this, the 12th of August. I nearly said October again. How are we doing out there, folks? I realise that if you're listening to this in the morning, it's currently the 13th. If you want to join us live, you can do that on the Twitch channel, the regular channel at the regular time. But of course, in my home studio. Let's see who's joining us live, shall we? We've got some nice people joining us in the chat already. We've got Artemisa. Yay! How are you doing, Artemisa? She says, I finally managed to buy some Eclipse sunglasses too. Yeah, so the eclipse is tonight. Again, if you're reading this, or if you're watching this rather, tomorrow. The eclipse was yesterday. But yeah, I also bought some Eclipse sunglasses late. So I paid €13 for essentially some paper glasses. But yeah, this evening I'll be going down to Guadalajara to watch the eclipse. Very excited about that. I think the last solar eclipse I saw, I was a very young man. I think it was 1999 in the UK, the last one, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. We've got Eugene joining us. He says it's warm and sunny here, so I'm at the beach. Sorry, not sorry, says Eugene. We're jealous, Eugene. The bridge is here. Good morning, Screech. Gosh, did you see that billow? Let's check the year to make sure, Rob. Yes. Yeah, it is the 12th of August 2026. Of course, if you're listening to this show in the afternoon, that's actually accurate information. Tomorrow we'll be streaming the show, the live show that you guys participate in. We'll be streaming that a little later than usual because I have to go to the office to help Fitz produce his radio show tomorrow. So we'll stream the show at 1 p.m. Central European Time. More info on that on my Instagram at @professionalbohemian. I will post something later on today to let you know. And I think that's all the housekeeping up to date. Mike is with us. He says, good morning, dear Bohemians. €13 for sunglasses, Jeezy Louise. By the way, do you know who is also going to see the eclipse in Guadalajara? Pedro Sanchez. Yeah, that's why I'm going. Big fan. I'm not going to see Pedro Sanchez. I'm going to see the eclipse, but that's interesting. Okay. Do you know, I wanted to get a bus. I wanted to get the Alsa back. And literally, I think everybody's had the same idea to go to Guadalajara because all the Alsa buses coming back into Madrid are booked. Every single one. Gigi's with us. Hi. It will be cloudy here. Bummer. Oh, sorry, Gigi. Yeah, thankfully, I think we're expecting clear skies here in Madrid. But yeah, anyway, for those of you who listening to this in the morning on the 13th, you're just thinking, well, that happened yesterday. Get on with some real news, shall we? So again, these are all our friendly neighborhood bohemians joining us in the chat. If you want to be as cool, as sexy, as charming as these guys, of course, a little later tomorrow at 1 p.m. To join us live. Well, you can do that on my Twitch account, which is twitch.tv/professionalbohemian. That's twitch.tv/bohemio profesional, pero en inglés. Of course, as always, you can interact with the show outside of our lifetimes. You do that on my Instagram, which is @professionalbohemian. Or if you're extra specially sexy, charming, intellectual, influential, where you can join me on my Patreon, where you get access to that, all the VODs for the shows, as well as some original series that are only there. And we'd be happy to see you there. At the end of the show, you see all the people who currently support me as a creator, and I really appreciate it because, it's not easy. All right, what's today's topics? Well, we're still on the topic of mental health, all the topics you voted for. One of the highest voted for topics we're going to discuss today. So we're talking about excuses for behaviour, perhaps. Vero says, why did you ignore me, Rob? Did I ignore you, Vero? Good morning, beautiful bohemians around the universe and beyond. The eclipse day has come. Sorry, Vero. You know what, Vero? For your patience, you're going to get a round of applause. Sorry, Vero. I suck. I know I suck. Look, I know I suck. You're the best. She's the best. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Sometimes my eyes skip a few comments. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting old, guys. You have to be patient with me. So we're talking about excuses for behavior, right? So today's 100 Humans question was, name something people use as an excuse for bad behavior. Nombra algo que la gente usa como excusa para comportarse mal. Or para mal comportamiento, right, you might say. And today's unpopular opinion is, trauma explains behavior, but doesn't excuse it. El trauma explica el comportamiento, pero no lo justifica. It's a tough one today. Again, as with all of these topics, very weighted in one side. But I'm hopefully going to offer you a little bit of nuance to what you may be feeling about this one. But before anything else, let's get into a little bit of news, shall we? Some interesting news today. And quite pertinent to today's topic, or this week's topic of mental health. California wants to ban AI therapists as thousands turn to chatbots for mental health care. California quiere prohibir los terapeutas de inteligencia artificial mientras miles de personas recurren a chatbots para recibir atención de salud mental. Probably a lot of reasons for this. I think number one reason is the price of a therapist. I mean, I did it for a year and it was expensive. But as we've seen following the news of AI human relations, chatbots are not the thing to turn to. We've seen people develop weird psychoses and beliefs simply because AI isn't argumentative enough. It's too sycophantic to offer really good advice. Look, people are supporting Vero in the chat and my poor eyesight. Bridge here says, Vero, sometimes se le obnublian las gafas. Yeah, sometimes my glasses have fingerprints on them. So California lawmakers are moving in to rein in AI's role in mental health care as more people, especially young people, turn to chatbots for support. Under Senate Bill 903, companies would be barred from marketing chatbots as therapy. AI systems would not be allowed to make therapeutic decisions without review by a licensed professional, and patients would need to consent before providers use AI to record sessions or triage care. Supporters say the goal is to protect patients from unsafe or misleading uses of AI, while critics argue the bill could block legitimate tools that help direct people towards treatment. I mean, if that's the case, perhaps. But I don't think people are using AI like they would use Google in this case. I mean, I know a lot of people do use AI instead of Google. But in this case, I think they're actually looking for actionable advice rather than where to get healthcare treatment, right? The debate comes as chatbot use for mental health continues to grow. Research cited in the article found that 1 in 8 adolescents, 1 in 8 adolescents and young adults have used chatbots for mental health care. And a separate study found that 77% of psychologists have spoken with patients who used AI for support or related reasons. I mean, that's a terrifying number, isn't it? So 77% of patients currently with a psychologist have used AI before going to that psychologist, or maybe while receiving treatment. Experts say the trend is being driven in part by long waits and limited access to in-person care. But they also warn that AI mental health advice lacks clear standards and transparent training data. The article also notes lawsuits involving AI tools and suicides, reinforcing why regulators are now trying to define stricter boundaries. I mean, if you're looking for the ProBoh advice here, don't. There are certain things that chatbots are great at, right? Perhaps as something to supplement your research. I use it as a research tool, but certainly not to ask advice for. Remember this, before asking AI for any advice, remember this. The dumbest person you know right now is being praised by ChatGPT for their insights. Oh, that's such a good question. The dumbest person you know. Maybe, perhaps, I would argue, a little too sycophantic to be a useful tool for mental health. But on that note, friends, let's go to today's unpopular opinion.
Unpopular opinion.
Okay, today's unpopular opinion, today's pedomental is one of the highest at least, voted for by you. Trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. El trauma explica el comportamiento, pero no lo justifica. A tough one and an interesting one today. So I did, as I always do, post the poll on Instagram, and 82% of people voted true. 82% of people said yes, trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. So, my job here is always to offer nuance wherever possible, and I imagine that many of you listening to the show right now agree. So let me just introduce a little poison pill of nuance into what might be biased thinking. The phrase "trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it" it treats trauma as though it was merely part of someone's backstory, right? Something that happened to you, it influenced you, but you still remain fully responsible for what you do next. But that, I think, may misunderstand the nature of trauma, what trauma actually does. Because if you've been subject to any kind of trauma, you will recognize that it can alter the very capacities we use to behave responsibly, like threat perception, emotional regulation, impulse control, trust, memory, the ability to distinguish danger from safety. In those cases, the problematic behavior isn't simply caused by an old injury. It can actually be a symptom of the injury itself. Does that make sense? We already recognize this principle elsewhere. If someone, for example, if you bang your head and you suffer a concussion, you wouldn't say the concussion explains why you couldn't remember where you were, but it doesn't excuse it. You would obviously say, oh my God, of course you don't remember where you are, you've got a concussion. I think the provocative argument then is that sometimes I think we apply, and we've seen this in previous episodes of this mental health series, we apply a strangely different moral standard to psychological injuries. A traumatized person's disproportionate anger or avoidance, mistrust, panic, it can occasionally just be no more than it can be no more voluntary than an injured person's limp, right? And if a person was limping because they banged their foot, you wouldn't say it's no excuse for limping, would you? So it seems to be we have a very different perception of psychological injury than we do of physical injury. I do have in my notes here, if an injury reduces someone's capacity to choose differently, then explaining the behavior necessarily changes how excusable the behavior is. Otherwise, we're claiming circumstances matter casually, but should never matter morally. We do, I think, we judge psychological illness or injury in a very different way than we do physical injury. And I think this is an interesting topic because it kind of reveals a lot of that. So let's get into it, shall we? Again, 82%, I believe it was now. Let me see. Yeah, 82% voted true on Instagram. So let's get into the pro column and see, get an insight into the way people think. Understanding cause is not the same as removing responsibility. Trauma can explain why someone becomes controlling, avoidant, aggressive, distrustful, or emotionally volatile, but an explanation tells us how behavior developed, not whether other people should have to absorb its consequences. Yeesh, but shouldn't responsibility take psychological capacity into account? Shouldn't it? I mean, if trauma seriously impairs someone's judgment or emotional regulation or threat perception, whatever, expecting ordinary levels of control is just unrealistic, isn't it? Again, you wouldn't do the same thing with a physical injury. You would have a little bit more empathy, I think. Victims of trauma can also create new victims. Again, we're in the pro column agreeing that trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. A person may have been harmed unfairly and later go on to harm others. Their suffering deserves compassion, but the people they hurt deserve protection as well. Making trauma an excuse can accidentally ask the next victim to pay the emotional debt created by the first one. This is very slanted framing for me. I mean, it can sound as though traumatized people are especially dangerous, and that's not often the case. Usually the person they hate, that hurt the most is themselves, right? Most traumatized people don't become abusive. I think the important distinction is between trauma itself and particular harmful behaviors. Let's continue. Accountability can be part of recovery. Taking responsibility does not have to mean shame or punishment. Recognizing the effects of one's behavior can be essential to changing patterns and rebuilding relationships. If every harmful act is explained away, the person may lose an important reason to grow. Yeah, okay, that's fair, isn't it? That taking accountability for one's actions is healthy. But I don't think that really speaks to the topic, does it? I mean, you can still take accountability for your behavior and be excused because of trauma, can't you? I mean, accountability imposed without sensitivity can deepen the shame and defensiveness that the person might hold. People often change more successfully when responsibility is paired with safety, support, and understanding. And if you can demonstrate those things to someone who's experienced trauma, then they're more likely to take accountability and understand that the behavior is destructive. Other people are entitled to boundaries. Someone can understand exactly why a traumatized person behaves badly and still decide that the behavior is unacceptable. Compassion does not require unlimited access, endless forgiveness, or remaining in a harmful relationship. Yeah, I think boundaries can sometimes become a way of avoiding the patience that difficult recovery requires, right? Healthy relationships inevitably involve tolerating some imperfection and emotional messiness, right? At least my relationships always have, not on my part either. I mean, I'm an imperfect individual. And sometimes just to be in a relationship, it requires a lot of understanding and patience. Obviously, there is a limit, isn't there? I mean, and through my therapy, I found out where my limit was. But it does require a lot of patience and empathy, right? Empathy, understanding why the person behaves in the way they do. It seems to me that we're more empathetic towards physical injury than we are psychological. And I wonder why that is. Okay, let's do a few more topics here in the pro column. Agreeing that trauma explains behavior but does not excuse it. Where were we? Where did we leave off? I think we're on number 5. If trauma is treated as marking harmful behaviors inevitable, the person can begin to seem powerless over their own actions. Holding them responsible also communicates that change is possible and that their past does not have to dictate their future. I think on the other side of that argument, though, emphasizing agency, the power, to control your own future, emphasizing agency too strongly can underestimate how deeply trauma shapes automatic reactions. People may genuinely need treatment and time before they can exercise a level of control that other people might expect of them. And again, I go back here to the trauma of my friends passing away and how that negatively affected my relationships and behavior. I mean, not in a way that was dangerous to others, more in a way that was dangerous to myself. But having experienced the effects of trauma, I've increased maybe tenfold in my empathy towards people that are struggling themselves. I mean, the nasty thing about trauma is that it is, it is almost has its own defense system against getting help. It requires a hell of a lot of empathy and a hell of a lot of reflection. Fairness must include everyone involved. So this is the last point here in the pro column, agreeing that trauma can explain behavior, but not justify it. Moral attention often focuses on the person whose past explains the behavior, but those affected by it also have histories, vulnerabilities, and limits. A fair response must recognize the traumatized person's suffering without making everyone around them responsible for managing it. I mean, again, this is a deeply nuanced topic, isn't it? But I would say that fairness can also require accommodation, right? To accommodate someone else's history. We routinely adjust expectations when people's circumstances meaningfully affect what they can manage. And psychological injury should not automatically be treated differently. Again, if you saw someone had hurt their leg, you wouldn't blame them for limping, would you? If a concussed person couldn't remember how they arrived in a certain situation, you wouldn't blame them. You would say, of course, you've got a concussion. So why do we treat it differently when it comes to psychological injury? Let's get into the cons now, where only, I think it was only 8% of people voted. No, 18% of people voted false today. Trauma can sometimes excuse behavior. That's what we're arguing here. Responsibility depends on capacity. We normally judge people partly by what they were capable of understanding and controlling at the time. Severe trauma can distort threat perception, trigger automatic responses, or overwhelm emotional regulation. In such cases, moral responsibility may gradually be reduced. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, isn't it? Behavior isn't always fully voluntary. Trauma responses can occur before deliberate thought even steps into the picture, like freezing, disassociating, panic, lashing out, or withdrawing. Treating every reaction as a claim of choice risks applying a model of human agency that does not match how our nervous systems actually work. Again, I think this is easier to understand if you've been around people who have suffered extreme trauma. I mean, again, you could argue that many impulses are automatic, but adults still are expected to learn how to manage them. But in cases of extreme trauma, that's just not the case, is it? Let's continue. Two identical behaviors can have very different meanings depending on what produced them. Someone who avoids intimacy out of manipulation is not in the same position as someone whose avoidance developed through fear, past harm, etc. Context should affect how harshly we judge people. I mean, we seem to be able to do that in every aspect except for in issues of mental health. And again, I think the more patient and the more understanding we are, the more we increase the likelihood of a traumatized person to be able to overcome that trauma. Not immediately blaming them for their damaged behavior, but showing some understanding. I mean, of course, then there is a huge weight of responsibility placed on that person to seek help, isn't there? But I think the first step is not blame. The first step is understanding, isn't it? Understanding, empathy. That should be our first go-to reaction rather than blame or shame. If traumatized people are told that explanations are irrelevant because they're still responsible, I mean, they're going to hear just condemnation. Shame can increase the secrecy, the defensiveness, hopelessness, making that positive change less likely, in my mind. Now, let's do another point here. Society already recognizes diminished responsibility elsewhere. We routinely modify expectations based on age, impairment, coercion, or extreme circumstances. Trauma can also alter a person's capacity in meaningful ways, so treating responsibility as entirely unaffected may be inconsistent. We don't expect young people, we don't expect children to make the level of decisions that we adults do. Anyway, friends, that's all we've got time for in this first half. I'll post a poll, you guys will vote, and I will see you in a few short minutes. Hey guys, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/professional bohemian. There you'll find VODs of the episodes as they are recorded live, blogs, vlogs, and behind the scenes content. If you'd like to watch the show live, you can do so on twitch.tv/professional bohemian, and you can participate in the polls we use in the show on Instagram @professional bohemian or Twitter @ProBoh, ProBoh. Okay, on with the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. You're joining us live 9 a.m. Central European Time if you're listening to this on the 13th in the morning. Of course, it is the 12th for those of us listening to the live stream. Welcome, welcome. A lot of you here today. I'd like to see that. You still have time to vote on our topic. I believe you've got about 4 minutes left. Let me just double check that information before, just to be sure I'm not lying to you all. No, 3 minutes left to vote. If you just tuned in, what did you miss? Pertinent to this week's topics of mental health, we're talking about California and how they want to ban AI therapists as thousands turn to chatbots for mental health care. I mean, they suggest here that the startling numbers of people turning to AI is because of long wait times and hard to find face-to-face therapy. I would argue the price, convenience of AI, but the fact of the matter is it's just incredibly dangerous, too sycophantic to offer good advice, I would argue. But California making inroads to banning the use of AI for mental health. I mean, we've heard about all sorts of horror stories about suicides and things like that caused by these chatbots. Even in some cases, like encouraging psychosis by some of the random advice it's giving, and that sycophantic nature, the tendency it has to agree with everything. Again, the dumbest person you know, el más tontito, the dumbest person you know right now is being told that they have great ideas by ChatGPT. So don't use it for therapy. Anyway, then we got into today's unpopular opinion, which is, I'll repeat it. Where are we? Trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. El trauma explica el comportamiento pero no lo justifica. And yeah, on 82%, my memory today. Yeah, 82% voted true on Instagram. So I tried to come in here today and offer some nuance. Again, revealing what I think is quite provocative is that we have a different moral standard for psychological injury than we do physical injury. Like if someone had a concussion and they couldn't remember where they were, you would excuse it. Okay, well, no problem. Of course, you've got a concussion. Sit down. We'll try and help. But we don't treat psychological injury in the same way, do we? So there is a little bit of a moral kind of difference for us, it seems, when talking about psychological injury in comparison to physical injury. I mean, the deeper debate is really about how much moral responsibility depends on freedom, right? We like to imagine behavior as a simple chain Like a person chooses an action, therefore the action reveals their character, right? And trauma complicates that picture because past experiences shape perception, emotional reactions, behavior, long before conscious choice even enters the process. I mean, we tend to think we have this agency over all of our actions, and we don't. Most of our actions just happen without any kind of choice or any kind of agency before our conscious mind takes hold. But I mean, obviously there's an equal danger on the other side. If every harmful action can be traced back to something that happened to the person, then responsibility just dissolves, doesn't it? Almost everyone has causes, wounds, conditioning, and circumstances that explain why they behave as they do. So it creates, I think, a difficult distinction between explanation, mitigation, and excuse. Explanation asks why something happened. Mitigation says the circumstances reduce how harshly we should judge it. An excuse says the person should not be held responsible for it. Those are not the same claim, yet public conversations often collapse into one of them, right? Like three very predictable responses. I think the deeper moral challenge is holding two truths at once, that people are shaped by things that they do not choose, and they can still become responsible for what those experiences lead to. So it's an interesting one. I'm going to obviously kind of shift more into the middle. I was I've swayed very heavily in the favor of the false column, just to try and offer a bit of nuance to what was heavily voted on one side. But let's get into some of your ideas here, because some nice comments here in the chat. Guys, you're doing great work. Vero says, true. Again, trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. True, says Vero. You can say your bad behavior is due to trauma, but it is an excuse for you not trying to correct it. Which again is another aspect of this, isn't it? And another important aspect of this. I mean, we can excuse bad behavior up until the point that bad behavior, I think, becomes chronic without seeking treatment. I mean, you can say, oh, it's okay, I understand, it's okay, I understand, it's okay, I understand. You can forgive up until a point, but then, eventually, if the person isn't seeking help to correct that behavior, then eventually you just have to give up the ghost. You have to throw your hands in the air and say, okay, well, look, enough is enough. I've been patient enough. Gigi says, true, trauma can help us understand why someone behaves in a certain way, but it doesn't mean that behavior is acceptable. If you have a trauma, you should look for help, and if you hurt someone with your behavior, you should apologize for it. Trauma can be an excuse for some time after the trauma, but not forever. Yeah, Gigi, you guys, both of you guys, are going to get an applause. Because I think both of you are coming at this from a very rational side, right? If I don't misunderstand, what you're saying is, yeah, we should understand. We should be patient. We should exercise empathy for someone who is behaving in a certain way because of past trauma. But they need to try and correct those problems. And if they don't, then eventually you're just throwing your patience and empathy into a black hole that will never ever be filled, right? And I, from past experiences, recognize that. There has to be a limit to your empathy, doesn't there? There has to be a limit, really. Not to your empathy, perhaps, because that makes us all sound like monsters, but there has to be a limit to how much of an excuse trauma can be a justification for behavior. I think it stops being a justification where the person just throws their hands up in the air and say, well, look, this is who I am, this is the way I am, and it's never going to change. I mean, we've all heard that phrase escape from people's mouths, the most immature thing I've ever heard. It's the way I am, and I'm never going to change. What, really? You've reached peak you, have you? Well, congratulations. Great comments. Thank you, Gigi Vero. Eugene says, true. Today we have many such people thanks to the war. Most of them went to the war voluntarily. Eugene, of course, joining us from Russia, and he's talking about the conflict in Ukraine right now. Still going on. And many people like Eugene not in favor of that war, but he sees people that have been indoctrinated and the trauma that the conflict has caused. Bridge here says the key is deciding how well one is in order to be able to re-enter society. Trauma must be treated, as you say, just like a physical disability. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, to play devil's advocate wherever I can, I think that the difficult thing about trauma is it has its own immune system. Our brains are so well wired to justify our decisions, even when the decisions are bad. Even when deep down we know the decisions are bad, we have this psychological immune system that keeps us, keeps our view positive of ourselves, right? Well, that's just because of this, but I can get this under control, you know? And it's sad that it's sad but true. I mean, if you've been around someone who is suffering the consequences of trauma, whether that's childhood trauma or trauma as an adult, you can recognize that. Well, look, no, I've got this under control. No. That psychological immune system at play justifying their bad behavior in other ways. No, that wasn't the trauma. That was because of this or that. I was tired, or, it was the alcohol, or, got a whole host of excuses. Oh, no, sorry, it was just stress. I was just angry. It was because of my friends. It was peer pressure. So yeah, that's the difficulty in dealing with trauma. I think is that we all have hardwired into our psychology. The trauma itself has its own immune system to justify our behavior, which makes it hard to even understand that you might need help. Anyway, let's continue. Artemisa says, I agree. My own traumas left me with a higher threat perception. So I was reactive, angry teen. As an adult, I've learned to catch myself before reacting and talk later when I'm calmer. I was treated badly as a child, and if anything, it's made me more careful not to treat others in the same way. Trauma can explain our reactions, but I believe what we do with that reaction is still our responsibility. Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to disagree because I, like you, I was a very rebellious teen as I learned from therapy as a reaction to things in my own childhood. And I, as an adult, have managed to get my anger and those knee-jerk responses under control. But I don't know. I feel like we all we all paint everyone with the same brush. We all look at things through our own lens, and because we were able to do it, we imagine that everybody else can. And quite often that's not the case, is it? People need more help. People don't have our own levels of agency, and it requires a hell of a lot of empathy to understand that. Yeah, to understand that everyone's not the same, and some people can be more deeply affected by things than others. Again, just playing devil's advocate here. Carmen says, trauma can completely modify your nervous system, and that explains behavioral issues. But you can work on it and rewire your system, so the things that triggered you don't do it anymore, or at least in the same way. Also, your behavior is what you choose to do with your feelings. Yeah, I mean, you're all very much making the same point here. And it's hard to disagree in a novel way, because I agree. I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years, like you guys commenting here. But I guess I guess, I come back to the same point that not everyone is equipped with the same level of emotional, psychological strength as you guys who overcame that trauma. For some people, it's a mountain to climb that they never quite do. Bridge says, I so agree with you, Rob. A disability is a disability. It makes no difference whether it's physical or psychological. Yeah, quite right. Quite right. And I think we do, even though I kind of, even though I've argued false today, I'm kind of a little bit in the true column, if I'm honest with you. But I do think that we do have different moral judgments towards psychological harm than we do physical. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think we've all got a lot, when I say we all, I mean society in general, have a lot of growing to do with our perception of mental health and the issues surrounding it. I've got some comments here on Instagram. Dario, writing to us again, says, understanding why someone behaves badly doesn't mean everyone else has to accept the behavior. Today's unpopular opinion: trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, we all have agency not to accept certain behaviors, don't we? We can all say, it's just how much empathy are we operating with? How much time are we willing to waste? I'm not saying that every time you're dealing with someone who's dealing with trauma is a waste of time. More to the point, just saying, like, how much empathy do you have to spend until you see actual results? I think that's different for each one of us. Erin says, I agree, but context matters. You can hold someone accountable without pretending their past had no influence. Yeah. I think that's the point, isn't it? The point is that the truth actually lies in that area of grey between true and false, doesn't it? I mean, you can hold someone accountable. You can, you can hold those two truths in your mind at the same time. That look, your past has caused you extreme emotional damage, but it doesn't excuse your crappy behavior towards me. Sorry, I almost swore there. Matej, Matej. Sorry if I've pronounced that terribly. At some point, healing becomes your responsibility. Other people shouldn't have to keep paying for what happened to you. Yeah. But once you go to response, you see some bad behavior, you say, okay, well, you need to go to a psychologist. Are you that direct? Or should you be practicing a little more patience? But then the argument becomes, at what point, and where is the line where you decide that, okay, this is enough is enough? Where is that line? Which has been a problem for me in the past. Understanding how much time I was willing to waste. Celine says, explanation and justification aren't the same thing. You can have compassion for someone and still have boundaries. Yeah, which I think is a completely rational explanation of today's unpopular opinion. Anyway, so let's get to the results of the poll, shall we? So I made the statement that trauma explains behavior but doesn't excuse it. El trauma explica el comportamiento, pero no lo justifica. I made that statement, and you guys said 63% true. Yeah, certainly we've pulled it back from that 82% on Instagram, haven't we? What's the final takeaway here? I think trauma can make harmful behavior understandable without making it harmless, right? Compassion asks us to look backwards and understand what happened to the person, but accountability asks us to look forwards and decide what must happen next. I think the fairest position is neither your past doesn't matter or your past excuses everything. I think the fairest position may be that your past explains the behavior, but healing includes learning not to pass the damage on. Going back to what Carmen and Artemisa were saying in the chat, In fact, I'll quote Artemisa again directly. Trauma can explain our reactions, but I believe what we do with that reaction is still our responsibility. In fact, for that, Cameron and Artemisa I just read, you guys get
ProBoh approved.
But on that note, friends, it's time to go to today's 100 Humans. Oh my God. It was a long walk to work today across snow-capped mountains and through river valleys, and on that walk I encountered 100 humans and I asked them a question. Today's question was, name something people use as an excuse for bad behavior. Nombra algo que la gente usa como excusa para comportarse mal. I asked them that question, they gave me their answers. I'm in possession of the top 7 answers. Your job in the audience is to identify those top 7 answers. If you were paying special attention in the first part, I did cover pretty much all of them. All right, let's get into it. Big thanks to, well, just to name a few of you, Ivan Samroff, Juan Arreo, Ivan GP, Mia, Pedro, Raj, and many, many others. Thank you on Instagram. If I don't read your name, it's not because I don't love you, it's because I don't have time. All right, let's see. Alcohol intoxication, says Eugene. Is alcohol there? Name an excuse for bad behavior. Well, I was drunk. Is it there? Yes, it is. And Eugene, with 23 of 100 humans, it's the number 1 answer. I'm sorry, I was drunk. All right. Gigi says, not sleeping well. So being tired, estar cansado. Is being tired there? Yes, it is. Well done. I'm tired, also said Artemisa. It's just who I am, says Mike. It's just who I am. Is it there? No, it's not. A brain hemorrhage, says Bridge. That's very specific answer, but of course not there. Where are we? I'm tired, brain hemorrhage. Bad mood, says Eugene. A bad mood. So like anger, right? I'm just in a bad mood. Oh, anger, ira. Is anger there? Yes, it is, Eugene. Well done. Anger is there. 17 of 100 humans said anger. It's the 4th most popular answer. Mike says upbringing. Your upbringing. Like a mala infancia, bad childhood. Is bad childhood upbringing there? Yes, it is. Well done. Bad childhood. That's there. 18 of 100 humans. Look, guys, think back to the unpopular opinion. There's a little clue for you. Anyway, let's see. Mental health issues. Oh, well, there it is. Mental health issues. Is mental health issues there? That's Gigi. Salud mental? Yes, it is. Well done. 11 of 100 humans said mental health. It's the 5th most popular answer. Being a kid. Wow. Being a kid. So being young, I did it because I'm young. What do young people usually blame their bad behavior on? Think about that and then you'll get the answer. Being a kid necessarily isn't there. Wah, wah, wah. But you're close. You're close. What do kids blame their behavior on usually? Where are we? Brain hemorrhage, upbringing, being a kid. I misunderstood, says the Bridge. Misunderstanding. It's not there, sorry. I'm going to come back to Gigi's answer here. Artemisa says stress. Stress. El stress. Is stress there? Yes, it is. Oh my God, guys. Oh my God, you're on fire. Full moon, says Eugene. Brilliant. Trauma, yeah, which I kind of put under mental health issues, Mike, which was there. All right, I'm going to come back to the Bridge. I'm going to come back to the Bridge and Artemisa later. First of all, I'm going to go through some answers on Instagram. I haven't slept well, so tiredness, says Ivan Samroff. Juan Arreo says fate. Well, it was bound to happen. It was in the stars. Money, says Juan Arreo, which is probably related to stress, isn't it? Personality, says Ivan GP. Mia said childhood, but like a poor childhood. Raj said being tired as well. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go back to the chat. Don't blame him, he's too young, says Vero. They are the wee ones, says Artemisa. So let's take a look at those two answers I skipped, right? Gigi said, everybody does it. Que todo el mundo lo hace. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. Wasn't that what you were all doing, says the bridge? And more importantly, other people's behaviour, says Juan Arreo. We have a way of saying that, don't we? Like, if Juan jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Is the common response from your parents. We have a way of naming that kind of influence in the UK. I think in Spanish you call it presión de grupo, but we call it peer pressure. Well done, guys, on fire. Peer pressure, well done, Mike, who named that exactly in the chat. Guys, again, you've completed today's 100 humans. My God. Is it that Dan isn't here? That's why you're all doing so well with 100 humans. That's 3 in a row. Well done, guys. Let's go through the list. I asked 100 humans to name an excuse people give for bad behavior. In position number 7, estar cansado, being tired. In position number 6, we had peer pressure, presión de grupo. In position number 5, mental health, salud mental. In position number 4, we had anger, ira, anger, 17 said that. In position number 3, a bad childhood, mala infancia. In position number 2, we had stress, estrés. Finally, with 23 of 100 humans, in position number 1, the most common excuse for bad behavior is, of course, alcohol. Well done. Okay, guys, that's all we've got time for today. Don't forget, tomorrow I'll be streaming the show. For all of you watching live, I'll be streaming it later at 1 p.m. Central European time. I will post a little notification of that on my Instagram, and I do really hope you're all there to join me, guys. So many things you could have been doing this morning. Instead of doing those things, you took the time to spend some time with me. It means the world. See you next time.